Picture yourself sitting quietly by a window as afternoon light softens across the room. The phone hasn't rung today. Your calendar holds no names, no plans. And in this stillness, a question rises, unbidden. Have I become invisible? Has the world moved on without me? If you've felt this, you're not alone in that feeling. Many people over 60 wake to quieter houses, less frequent visits, phone calls that used to come weekly, now arriving monthly, if at all. The birthday cards grow fewer, the invitations thin. The children are busy with their own lives, calling when they remember but often forgetting. Friends you once saw regularly have moved to other cities, or their health has declined, or they've simply drifted into different rhythms. Society has taught us to measure a life's richness by how full our social calendars are, how many friends we keep, how often we're invited somewhere. We're told that aging alone means aging poorly, that solitude equals failure. The television shows depict lonely elders as tragic figures. The articles warn of the dangers of social isolation. The underlying message is clear. If you're spending time alone, something has gone wrong. But what if that's not true? What if the Buddha understood something 2,500 years ago that our modern world has forgotten? He taught that suffering comes not from our circumstances, but from our resistance to them. The ache we feel isn't caused by being alone. It's caused by believing we shouldn't be. It's the story we tell about aloneness that creates the pain, not the aloneness itself. Consider this. The Buddha himself sought solitude. Before his enlightenment, he spent years in the forest, deliberately choosing time alone over the company of others. He wasn't running from connection, he was running toward clarity. And when he returned to teach, what he shared wasn't born from crowds and noise, but from silence and stillness. Today, we're going to walk a different path together. Not one that denies the human need for connection, but one that reveals a deeper truth. Living alone in your later years is not a social failure, it is a spiritual evolution. Less noise, fewer people, more truth, more freedom, more peace. 1. The shift in priorities with age. When you were younger, friendships felt like oxygen. The phone always had to be ringing, plans filled every weekend. Being alone on a Friday night felt like a small tragedy, something to apologize for or hide. But something happens as the decades accumulate. The urgency softens. That desperate need to be surrounded, to be validated, to be included, it begins to quiet. Not because you've given up, but because you've discovered something more nourishing. Think about your 20s. Do you remember the exhaustion of maintaining friendships that demanded so much, yet fed your soul so little? The social obligations that felt more like performances than connections? All that energy spent trying to belong somewhere, anywhere. Now, in these ripening years, you've earned the right to choose differently. The Buddha spoke of this when he talked about the middle years of life, being for householding, for building and maintaining. But the later years? They're for something else entirely. They're for knowing, for being, for the kind of peace that doesn't require an audience. There's a beautiful shift that happens. What once felt like isolation begins to feel like sanctuary. What once seemed like loneliness reveals itself as solitude, and these are not the same thing. Loneliness is the ache of absence, the feeling that something essential is missing. Solitude is the presence of the self, the discovery that you are enough. One is suffering, the other is freedom. And the difference between them isn't found in how many people surround you, but in how deeply you've learned to sit with your own company. I once knew a woman named Margaret who spent her first 65 years rarely alone. Raised in a large family, married young, raised 4 children, worked in a busy office. Then widowhood arrived. Her children scattered across states. Retirement emptied her days. For the first year, she described it as falling into a void, but then something shifted. She started drinking her morning tea slowly, really tasting it. She began walking without a destination, just noticing. She discovered she had opinions about things she'd never taken time to form before. As she put it quietly one afternoon, "I thought being alone would hollow me out. Instead, I'm finding there's more of me here than I knew." This is what the Dharma teaches us. The Buddha himself spent extended periods in solitude before his enlightenment, not running from people, but running toward himself. He understood that sometimes the clearest path to wisdom requires stepping away from the noise of others' expectations. 2. The freedom of self-reliance. There's an old teaching the Buddha shared. Be a lamp unto yourself. Not because others aren't valuable, but because no one else can walk your path for you. No one else can do your breathing, your dying, your awakening. Self-reliance in old age is not loneliness. It's liberation. For decades, you've probably organized your life around others. You've been needed as a parent, a spouse, a worker, a friend. You've shown up, sacrificed, adjusted your days to fit everyone else's needs. This is not wrong. This is beautiful. But it's also exhausting. Now, perhaps for the first time, you have permission to live for yourself. Not selfishly, but self-fully. To arrange your days according to what nourishes you, not what obligates you. To say no without guilt. To say yes only when your heart hums with genuine desire. This is what Buddhists call freedom from attachment. Not detachment from caring, but freedom from needing external validation to know you're living well. I think of a retired teacher named Arthur who told me, "For 40 years, I woke to an alarm, rushed to please others, measured my worth by their approval. Now I wake when my body wakes. I read what interests me. I walk because moving feels good, not because someone's watching. And you know what? I've never felt more alive." That's self-reliance, not isolation, not bitterness, but the profound peace of discovering you are already whole. The Buddha didn't achieve enlightenment surrounded by crowds cheering him on. He sat alone under the Bodhi tree, just him and the vast truth of existence. When he arose, he didn't bring that truth to share because he needed friends. He shared it because wholeness naturally overflows into generosity. This is the paradox. When you stop needing others to complete you, your relationships actually become richer. You engage with people by choice, not fear. You love not from emptiness, but from fullness. And that kind of connection, that's the deepest kind there is. Think about your current friendships. How many are born from genuine desire versus obligation? How many leave you feeling lighter versus drained? Self-reliance gives you permission to prune what no longer serves, to invest deeply in what does, and to honor the sacred space of your own company. 3. Quality over quantity. Here's something the Buddha understood deeply. A single moment of true presence outweighs a lifetime of distracted encounters. As you age, you begin to see this clearly. One sincere conversation with someone who truly listens matters more than dozens of surface-level interactions. A friend who shows up when things are difficult means more than 100 acquaintances who only appear for celebrations. The Buddha taught his disciples to practice what he called right speech and right relationship. This doesn't mean perfect speech or perfect friendship. It means intentional connection. It means showing up with your whole self, not just the parts you think others want to see. In your younger years, you might have measured friendship by frequency, how often you saw someone, how quickly they returned calls. But now, you know better. Now you understand that depth matters more than duration. There's a Buddhist practice that speaks to this beautifully. When drinking tea, just drink tea. When walking, just walk. When sitting with a friend, just sit with your friend. No multitasking, no half attention, just full presence. This is what makes friendships meaningful in later life. Not how many people you know, but how deeply you know the few who remain. I remember a man named Robert telling me about his friendship with John. They'd been neighbors for 20 years, but rarely spent time together until both were widowed. Now they meet every Tuesday morning for coffee. They don't fill the silence with chatter. Sometimes they sit for long stretches saying nothing at all. "We're just keeping each other company," Robert said. "Not doing anything, just being." That's the wisdom of quality over quantity. It's choosing depth over breadth. It's recognizing that as your energy becomes more precious, you want to spend it on connections that actually nourish your soul. And here's what's beautiful. When you stop trying to maintain friendships out of obligation, the ones that remain become more authentic. The performance drops away. What's left is real. This is Buddhist discernment in action. Not judgment, but wisdom. Not shutting people out, but choosing carefully who gets access to your peace. 4. The beauty of solitude and reflection. Let me be clear about something important. Solitude is not loneliness. They look similar from the outside, but they feel completely different from within. Loneliness is an ache, a feeling that something's missing, an emptiness that echoes. Solitude is a sanctuary, a space where you finally hear yourself, a fullness that doesn't need filling. The Buddha spent years in solitude before his awakening, not because he hated people, but because clarity requires stillness. Before his enlightenment, he withdrew deep into the forest. He said later that he would flee if he saw anyone coming, choosing the company of silence over human voices. Why? Because in solitude, the masks we wear for others fall away. The personas we've built crumble. And what remains is just you, raw, honest, unedited. This can feel uncomfortable at first, like meeting a stranger, but with time, it becomes the deepest friendship you'll ever know. There's an old Zen story about a monk who spent months alone in a mountain cave. When he returned to the monastery, another monk asked, "Were you lonely?" He smiled and said, "I was never alone. I finally met myself." This is what solitude offers. Not absence, but presence. Not emptiness, but discovery. Think about the times in your life when the most profound insights arrived. Were you at a crowded party? Or were you alone, walking, sitting quietly, waking before dawn with nothing but your own thoughts? Solitude creates space for reflection. In Buddhist practice, this is essential. We can't see clearly when our minds are constantly pulled outward by others' needs, opinions, and expectations. But in quiet, we begin to notice things. The patterns we've lived unconsciously, the beliefs we've carried without examining, the small joys we've overlooked while rushing past. I knew a woman named Elena who retired and suddenly found herself with hours of unstructured time. At first, she filled every moment, television, errands, endless projects. But eventually, she allowed herself to just sit. At first, it felt like suffocating, she told me. But then, it felt like breathing for the first time in decades. That's what solitude can offer. Room to breathe, space to be, permission to exist without performing. And here's something research confirms. Older adults who embrace solitude often experience what scientists call psychological richness. Not just happiness, but a deeper satisfaction that comes from self-knowledge, from creativity, from the freedom to explore your own mind without interruption. Solitude doesn't mean giving up connection. It means honoring the connection with yourself as equally sacred. 5. The role of family and community. Now, let me be clear. Embracing solitude doesn't mean rejecting all human connection. The Buddha didn't teach isolation. He taught balance. He spoke of Sangha community as one of the 3 jewels of Buddhist practice, alongside the Buddha himself and the Dharma teachings. Community matters. Connection matters. But the form it takes can evolve. In your later years, your role in family and community shifts. You're no longer the one everyone depends on for everything. Your children have grown. Your career has ended. The daily obligations have lifted. But this doesn't make you irrelevant. It makes you something more valuable, a keeper of wisdom. You've lived through decades of joy and sorrow. You've survived losses others haven't yet faced. You carry knowledge earned through living that no book can teach. This is what Buddhists call living Dharma wisdom, embodied in a person, not just written in texts. When you share a story with a grandchild, you're not just entertaining them, you're passing down perspective they'll need when they face their own trials. When you offer a kind word to a neighbor, you're not making small talk. You're creating ripples of connection in a world that desperately needs more of it. There's a Buddhist concept called dana generosity. It doesn't always mean giving money or things. Sometimes the most generous gift is your presence, your listening, your accumulated understanding of how to live through difficulty and still find peace. I think of a retired nurse named Gloria who started volunteering at a community center, not because she needed to stay busy, but because she wanted to offer what she'd learned. She said, "I can't work long hours anymore. My body won't allow it, but I can sit with someone who's scared. I can listen without needing to fix. That's something I've spent 70 years learning how to do." This is how community evolves in later life. You're no longer building a massive social network. You're creating meaningful moments, one conversation at a time, one gesture of kindness at a time. And the beauty is, these small connections don't require you to sacrifice your solitude. They enhance it. Because when you engage from a place of inner fullness rather than outer need, every interaction becomes more genuine. The Buddha taught that wisdom and compassion arise together. As you deepen your practice of solitude, your capacity for true compassion actually grows. You're not giving from obligation or emptiness. You're giving from overflow. 6. Letting go of social expectations. Society places enormous pressure on us to stay busy, stay social, stay connected. Especially as we age, there's this underlying panic. Don't become one of those lonely old people. Keep your calendar full. Go to every event. Say yes to everything. But here's what the Buddha understood. Attachment to social expectations is suffering. When you cling to the idea that you must have many friends, must attend every gathering, must never eat alone or spend a weekend without plans, you create unnecessary pain. Because life doesn't always cooperate with these expectations. Friends move away, energy declines, bodies don't move as easily as they once did. And if your happiness depends on maintaining a social life identical to what you had at 40, you're setting yourself up for constant disappointment. There's a teaching in Buddhism about letting go, not of people themselves, but of our tight grip on how things should be. What if you release the expectation that a good life requires a full social calendar? What if you gave yourself permission to live more quietly, more selectively? This doesn't mean giving up connection. It means being honest about what truly nourishes you versus what you're doing out of fear or obligation. I knew a man named David who kept attending a weekly card game with men he'd known for 30 years. But every week, he dreaded it. The conversations had grown stale. The jokes no longer landed. He went because he thought he should, because he worried what they'd think if he stopped. Finally, at 72, he said no. And you know what happened? Nothing terrible. The world didn't end. Those men found someone else for the fourth seat, and David started spending Wednesday evenings doing what he actually enjoyed: reading, taking walks, sitting with his thoughts. I spent so much energy worrying what people would think, he told me. I forgot to ask what I actually wanted. That's the freedom Buddhism offers. Release from the tyranny of others' opinions. The Dharma doesn't ask you to be popular. It asks you to be present. It asks you to be true. In old age, you've earned the right to live authentically, to say no without explanations, to protect your peace fiercely, to choose solitude when that's what your soul needs, and connection when it genuinely calls to you. The Buddha said that comparing yourself to others is a source of suffering. This includes comparing your social life to what you think it should be, or what it used to be, or what your neighbor's looks like. Your path is yours alone. 7. Redefining connection. Let's talk practically for a moment, because embracing solitude doesn't mean becoming a hermit. It means redefining what connection looks like in these years. Maybe you can't host dinner parties anymore, but you can call a friend and truly listen. Maybe you can't travel to visit family, but you can share a video call where you're fully present, not distracted. Maybe you can't volunteer all day, but you can smile at the person ringing up your groceries and exchange a genuine moment. Connection doesn't require grand gestures or constant availability. It requires intention. There's a teaching in Buddhism about skillful means, adapting the practice to fit your circumstances without abandoning the principle. Connection is like this. The principle remains. We are interdependent beings who need each other. But the form it takes can shift. One deep conversation matters more than 10 shallow ones. One letter written with care means more than 100 quick texts. One afternoon spent with someone who truly sees you nourishes more than a week of surface-level socializing. And here's something beautiful. Technology, which often gets blamed for isolating us, can actually bridge distances when used mindfully. A video call with a grandchild across the country. A message to an old friend you haven't seen in years. These aren't replacements for in-person connection, but they're not nothing either. I think of a woman named Ruth, who can no longer leave her apartment easily. But every morning, she texts a photo of her windowsill plants to 3 friends. They respond with their own small updates. It's our way of saying we're still here, she explained. We're still paying attention to each other. That's connection. Simple, sustainable, real. Buddhism teaches that all beings are interconnected. But interconnection doesn't mean constant interaction. It means recognizing that even in solitude, you're part of the vast web of life. The air you breathe was breathed by others. The food you eat was grown by hands you'll never meet. You are never truly separate, even when you're alone. This understanding transforms solitude from isolation into communion. You're not cut off. You're simply experiencing a different form of presence. 8. A legacy of wisdom. Let's talk about what you leave behind. Because contrary to what our culture suggests, your legacy isn't measured by your social network size. The Buddha taught that what matters is how we live, how we treat others, what wisdom we embody and share. Your legacy isn't the number of people at your funeral. It's the moments of kindness you offered, the wisdom you shared, the peace you cultivated within yourself that quietly influenced everyone around you. Think about the elders who have touched your life most deeply. Were they the ones with the biggest social circles? Or were they the ones who carried a certain quality, patience, kindness, clarity, that you felt in their presence. That's what you can offer now, not performance, not busyness, but presence. The kind of grounded, peaceful awareness that only comes from years of living and, yes, from time spent in solitude, getting to know yourself. When you share a story with a younger person, you're not just entertaining them, you're showing them that it's possible to age without bitterness, to face loss without collapsing, to live simply without feeling impoverished. This is what Buddhists understand as being a lamp. Not because you're perfect, but because you've learned how to keep your inner light steady even when the winds of life blow hard. And the beautiful paradox is this. When you stop trying to maintain countless surface relationships and instead focus on becoming deeply at peace with yourself, people are actually drawn to you. Not all people, but the right people. The ones who recognize something real when they encounter it. I knew a man named Thomas who spent his 70s gardening alone, reading, sitting quietly on his porch. His children worried he was lonely, but slowly, neighbors started stopping by, not for long visits, just to sit for a few minutes, to ask his advice, to absorb whatever it was he carried, that quality of unhurried peace. "I'm not doing anything special," he'd say. But he was being fully himself, without pretense. And that's rare enough to be magnetic. Your legacy isn't built in crowds, it's built in moments. In how you treated the cashier, in the patience you showed when someone was difficult, in your willingness to sit with your own struggles without numbing or running. 9. The gift of one's own company. We're coming to the heart of it now, the deepest teaching, the one that changes everything. Learning to be good company for yourself is not a consolation prize for failing to maintain friendships. It is the foundation of all genuine connection. Think about it. If you can't sit peacefully with yourself, how can you sit peacefully with anyone else? If your own mind feels like an enemy, you're constantly fleeing, how can you be present for another person's heart? The Buddha discovered this sitting alone under that tree. He didn't find enlightenment in debate or discussion. He found it in stillness, in turning toward himself with such complete acceptance that the illusion of separation dissolved. This is what solitude offers you now. Not loneliness, but the discovery that you are enough. That the voice you've been seeking, the one that knows how to guide you, has been inside you all along. There's a practice in Buddhism called metta, loving kindness. It begins with directing compassion toward yourself, not in a selfish way, but recognizing that if you can't hold yourself with kindness, you can't genuinely offer it to others. Try this right now. Place your hand on your heart. Feel the warmth. Whisper, even just in your mind, "May I be peaceful. May I be kind to myself." Feel how radical that is. We spend decades learning how to be kind to others, but being kind to ourselves, truly kind, not indulgent but gentle, this we often never learn. Solitude teaches this. When there's no one to perform for, no one to impress, you're left with yourself. And you can either wage war with that reality, or you can make peace. The Buddha chose peace, and in that peace, he found freedom so profound that it transformed not just his life, but millions of lives across centuries. You are the one person you'll be with every single moment until your last breath. Shouldn't that relationship be a good one? I think of something a meditation teacher once said. The goal isn't to get rid of yourself. It's to finally come home to yourself. In these later years, with less external noise, fewer obligations pulling you outward, you have a precious opportunity. Not to become isolated, but to become intimate with the vast, mysterious, beautiful consciousness that is you. And from that intimacy, something remarkable happens. You stop needing others to make you feel whole. And paradoxically, your capacity to truly love others deepens, because you're giving from fullness, not from need. So here we are, at the end of this reflection, but really at the beginning of understanding. Living joyfully alone in old age is not about rejecting connection. It's about discovering the deepest connection of all, the one with your own presence, your own breath, your own mysterious existence. The Buddha taught that life is impermanent. People come and go, circumstances change. The friendships that once defined your weeks may fade. The phone may ring less often. The house may grow quieter. But the awareness that witnesses all of this, that remains. And when you learn to rest in that awareness, you discover you're never truly alone. You're accompanied by life itself, by the trees outside your window that change with each season, by the beating of your own heart that has faithfully kept time for decades, by the vast, interconnected web of existence that breathes through every living thing, including you. You are part of something so much larger than any single relationship. This doesn't mean you won't sometimes feel lonely. You're human. Loneliness will visit like weather passing through, some days heavy, some days light. But now you understand the difference between loneliness, which is temporary, and your essential nature, which is complete. You've learned that being alone and being lonely are not the same thing. One is a circumstance, the other is a state of mind. There's a profound teaching in Buddhism about the nature of self. The Buddha said there is no fixed, permanent self to cling to. We are constantly changing, flowing, evolving. When you embrace solitude, you get to witness this truth directly, without the mirrors of others' expectations, without the roles you've played for so long. You finally meet yourself as you actually are, not as you were, not as you should be, but as you are right now, in this moment. You've earned this season of life. You've fulfilled countless obligations, played countless roles, given endlessly to others. You've been the parent, the spouse, the worker, the caregiver, the friend who always showed up. You've carried responsibilities that shaped decades of your days. Now you're invited into something different, not less valuable, but more free, not diminished, but distilled down to what's essential. Live simply, not because you lack resources, but because simplicity creates space for what matters. Love deeply the few who remain in your circle, investing your precious energy in connections that truly nourish. Protect your peace fiercely, understanding that saying no to what drains you is saying yes to what sustains you. Spend time with yourself as you would with a dear friend, with patience, with kindness, with genuine interest. Notice what you think about when no one's watching. Discover what brings you joy when you're not performing for others. Learn what your own voice sounds like when it's not drowned out by noise. And know this, every moment you spend at peace with your own company is a victory, not against loneliness, but for liberation. You're learning what the Buddha learned, that freedom doesn't come from having everything you want, but from wanting what you have, including, especially, yourself. This is the Dharma of aging. Not fighting the tide of change, but learning to float. Not resisting the quiet, but discovering what speaks in the silence. Not mourning who you were, but celebrating who you're becoming. The world tells you that your value decreases as your social network shrinks. But the Dharma tells you something different. Your value has never been determined by how many people want your company. Your value is inherent, unchanging, as constant as the sky that holds all weather. If this touched something in you today, I'd love to hear about it in the comments below. What's your relationship with solitude? What wisdom have you discovered in these quieter years? Have you found freedom in living more simply, more alone? Your insights might be exactly what someone else needs to hear. We're all walking this path together, even in our solitude. And if you found value here, please subscribe to our channel. We explore Buddhist wisdom for the later chapters of life every week, offering gentle guidance for aging with peace, purpose, and dignity. This is not just content, this is companionship for the journey. Remember, you're not behind, you're not late. You haven't failed at friendship or fallen short of some social ideal. You're exactly where you need to be. The journey inward is the greatest journey of all, and you're already on the path. Every breath is a step forward. May you be peaceful in your solitude. May you be free from the fear of loneliness. May you discover the profound joy that's been waiting in your own company all along. And may you know, deeply, that even alone, you are held by something vast and sacred. The same awareness that held the Buddha under his tree. The same life force that moves through all beings. This is your time. Not to prove anything, not to maintain anything, simply to be. And in that being, to find the freedom you've been seeking all along.